Hello everyone, Mercurial girl here, and today we are going to delve a little deeper into duality. So in my last episode, I shared a little bit about the sun presentation of the 12 zodiac signs and then went over what the moon presentation is of the 12 zodiac to get a little bit of that like shadow to light polarity. So I want to delve into that a little deeper today and explain masculine versus feminine and the polarities between the signs. So starting with yang energy. So this is our masculine energy, our thinking energy, our action oriented kind of energy. And in astrology, yang is really the air and fire signs. That falls into much more of a masculine category. So you really want to look at your birth chart and see how many fire and air placements you have to know if you started off this soul journey with more dominant masculine energy. Now, I am one of those people. I have 7 masculine placements and 4 feminine placements, and I 100% fall into a more masculine presentation. Now, for a long time before starting my kind of spiritual journey, I thought my way was the right way, right? I was so resistant towards that yin and feminine energy. I thought that was the wrong way to live. And I thought my way was just more right. And I think for people that fall into more masculine dominant energy in their birth chart, society really reflects a more masculine presentation. We're expected to show up every day with the same energy. We're expected to keep achieving and moving forward. Anytime you go backwards, I feel like there's a lot of shame that's associated with that within our society. It feels wrong to be moving back and circling back to something. We expect to just be going and going forward. Now, that is definitely the shadow side to masculine energy. It's beautiful that with masculine comes so much thinking power and ability to really see things in a more unattached, emotionally charged way, because that can lead to some clarity that I think can be lost with too much feeling at times and not enough ability to put that into thoughts. But that shadow side is this very dominant, power focused control energy that can be really neglectful towards the opposite. And I think that is something that's also kind of been rewarded in society. You see this masculine kind of at the top hierarchy, and you really see everyone else that falls into more feminine seeming like they are behind. Now, I believe for yang, so if you have more fire and air in your chart, I have worked on this extensively to figure out my relationship to yin energy so I can invite more of it in my life. And what that has looked like for me is really tuning into my body a lot more. I think because inherently I always think something before I feel it. A lot of times I don't go back and sit with the feeling of something, review the feeling of things. And for me, when I get into my body, so yoga mat, dancing, just sitting there and swaying, I often can have a lot of feelings surface up that maybe I didn't give space and time for in the moment because my brain moves a million miles an hour and I am always thinking all the time. So for me, inviting in space and kind of literally having to plan out times to feel has been really essential for me to develop a relationship with that. I also have really realized that I've surrounded myself with people that really feel very loudly, and that has taught me a lot about accepting that energy as being just as valid and just as real, of a lens to view perspective as my own. And so I've really worked on balancing that out. So that's a little bit of an overview of yang and masculine energy. Let's talk about the opposite and look at our yin and feminine energy. Now, yin, because it's more cyclical based, I feel like there is not going to be a consistency day to day, week to week, or even hour to hour. feeling and yin energy is just a completely different language than yang energy. It is going off of an undercurrent. It is going off of what something feels like in the body, what sensations it produces, what emotions kind of feel like to determine if something's for them or not for them. And because of this, 1 second you could be feeling one thing and the other second you could be feeling something else. It's an ebb and flow, but I also believe it's a reflection of what is not being said. I think it's a reflection of the undercurrent. It's more shadowy, it's more internal based. And I have shared in the last video, earth placements. So this is earth and water placements we're talking about that fall into that like yin energy. So look at your chart and see how much water and earth you have to know where you stand with this. But I think earth gets this reputation for being goal-oriented and focused and practical. But I really believe that if we remember that earth is charged by feminine energy, I think it's often a reflection of what they believe society is focused on. They're taking what they feel from around them and it's looking like it's their reality. But I truly believe that earth is just reflecting society's presentation right now. I think with society looking different and being a lot more accepting of a more inconsistent, non-productive 24/7 kind of reality, earth would be so much more into relationships and grounding and connecting with nature. It would be a completely different presentation. Now, water placements, if you have a lot of water in your chart, I feel like they can't really hide this reflection as well of what they feel, but everything comes in as a feeling first. And for a lot of times with heavy feminine charts, I think it takes a lot of time to sit and come up with how something is in thinking form. So feelers will feel something and then they just kind of move on to the next feeling versus taking the time to sit and see if there's some mental patterns in those things, in those feelings. And my husband has 8 feminine placements so I think for him it can be really hard to put things into thought. It takes time. He has to sift through the feelings and see if he can come up with words for them. I really believe that heavy feminine charts really need a practice of journaling or a practice of slowing down enough to not just move past those feelings because society has convinced you that feeling something loudly and big is wrong, and instead really see what thoughts you can provoke from some of those feelings. So going into this and kind of tying it together, we really want to figure out our relationship to the other. So I feel like for feelers, feminine, yin energy, or heavy earth and water dominant birth charts, I think being pushed to do things towards goals can feel really icky. I think it can be gross to hear what someone is thinking about something you are feeling. There can be just a lot of resistance towards what the polar is, the opposite energy. And the same goes for masculine. I think that masculine can think feelings slow you down, that there's not time for that, that it's really uncomfortable when people are loud about how they feel or express emotional vulnerability. Now, I think for feeler and feminine energy, because society doesn't really reflect as much of an acceptance for that, it's really important for heavy masculine and yang charts and fire and air to learn how to help vocalize the importance of the feminine energy. I think for them, there's a lot of defense because society is constantly convincing them that their way is wrong. When reality, it's another language. It's like another reality. I truly think we could be living in 2 different perspectives and perceptions of the world around us. There could be a world for the yang and a world for the yin, and we're really meant to figure out how to integrate and involve both worlds to where there isn't separation. There is really beautiful duality that is being embraced by both sides. So let's talk about the polarities of the signs. So every single house in astrology, when you look at the little chart wheel, whatever sign is on one side, you want to look opposite and figure out what all of the opposing polar energies are in astrology. There is a lot in common with the sign that's opposing. So we'll go through each of these, starting with Aries, with the opposite being Libra. Now, Aries is a very me first kind of like independent energy, versus Libra, that's on the opposite side, is all about partnerships, weighing out all the options of other people. So in it is really this duality between self and other, me versus relationship. Looking at the next masculine, so both of those are masculine polarities. Let's go over Gemini and Sagittarius. So Gemini is really about close, personal exchange of thought, exchange of ideas, versus Sagittarius is really higher thinking, learning through adventure, experience, figuring out like how the whole universe works. When Gemini is like, let's get into the nitty gritty information and exchange and talk about it and figure out where things land. Both of these, it's an air versus a fire, just like Aries, and Libra is a fire versus an air. Going into the third masculine duality, we are going to talk about Leo versus Aquarius. Leo is very creative and self-expression, and it's known for kind of wanting to be in a spotlight, to shine, versus Aquarius still wants to shine, but they want to shine by not shining. They want to be seen as unique and quirky, and no one has a style like them, which is still kind of wanting to be in the spotlight, Aquarius, just in a completely like unique way. Aquarius is also about higher ideals, to figure out like the collective hopes and dreams, versus Leo is a lot more individual self-expression and how to get it out. Now, looking at the three polarities for our yin, our feminine sort of energy, we'll start with Taurus versus Scorpio. So Taurus on one side of the wheel is really about material world, self-possession, self-goals, versus Scorpio is really about intimacy with others, other people's resources, kind of more of the spiritual undertones of something versus more of the material possession of something. Scorpio still has a possessive energy, but it's a lot more of wanting to intertwine and like mesh with somebody and figuring out like all their internal world and secrets. Now, looking at Cancer versus Capricorn. Cancer is really this at home, family, close friends, what's comfortable. It's home life energy, versus Capricorn is really about public image, career focus, work focus, how society perceives and is taking you. And it's a lot more of public life versus home life. Then looking at that third duality, it's Virgo versus Pisces. Virgo is all about perfecting, refinement, day-to-day routine, and how to kind of integrate that into really like a self-improvement energy, versus Pisces on the opposite side is really about fantasy, imagination, being a little bit more like self-delusional and going deep into the imagination of a bigger fantasy world, spending time alone in your daydreams, versus really kind of being delusional in the opposite and thinking the world is supposed to work one way. Pisces is kind of like detached from the world. So same energy, just kind of being channeled two different ways. So all of these polarities point to a lot of your relationship to two sides of the same coin. So I think it's really important to see in your birth chart what signs you have planets in, and then kind of looking opposite of that and seeing how you interact with the duality of it, because often we can kind of shun the duality instead of embracing it as being so similar to us. And I think the overall zoom out of astrology is full acceptance for every person, and just figuring out how we can see and accept all the sides of ourselves and see and accept all the sides to others, so that we're not rippling through society with these side effects of neglecting sides of ourselves and neglecting sides of others, and instead bringing it all together and seeing it kind of all as one. This has been another episode of Mercurial Girl. Thank you for being here and listening. If you ever want help delving into your own birth chart to figure out your soul's mission, purpose, strengths, weaknesses, all the good stuff you can squeeze out of a birth chart, go to sensiblewellness.com, where I have private one-on-one birth chart readings that I record and help you kind of talk through. If you want to hear more astrology, please subscribe, and I will see you next week with more Mercurial Girl.